I'm Greg Judy. I'm from mid-Missouri. So I read an article that changed my whole life. And it was, your sole purpose in life should not be to own the land, but to control it. And what that guy was talking about was, leasing land. That's kind of how we got started. So by going after other people's land that they weren't using, we preserved our profit that we generated from our grazing, built up a nest egg, and got out of debt. So we've been self-financed from the beginning by using other people's land and other people's cattle. So we got into the custom grazing business. So we got paid so much a day to graze other people's livestock on other people's land. And so I wrote my first book in 2001 called No Risk Ranching, Custom Grazing on Leased Land. And so when Claire and Brana asked me to come over here, this was the topic that they told me to talk on, was grazing for profit and growth. So we're going to talk about using the animals today. We're not big on inputs. We don't have a lot of inputs because we found out the secret to making a profit every year, especially on farming today, is to control your input cost. It's pretty simple. And so you got to make more money than you spend. We're going to keep it real simple today. And by doing that, we've limited purchase inputs. We use the animals to build the soil. So what are you talking about using animals to build soil? Well, folks, the land that we've got, when we first started, it was really unproductive land. I'm talking, for your alls, I hear a lot of people talking about gorse and some of these other invasive plants that you got where animals want to eat it. That's kind of what we started with. Our invasive plant in the U.S. is called broom sedge. So broom sedge is a sign of broken soil. Lots of moss, broom sedge, and cedars. That's what happens to the land in the United States, in our area, when it's abused. It just goes to nothing. It won't support a mouse. And so how do you get that going and turn it into something you can graze to make a profit, something to lead it? Well, you've got to use the animals. That's the only thing that we have. Folks, we were poor. We didn't have anything. We both came out of a divorce. Jan and I did. And we didn't have nothing. And so we weren't, I think that's a good thing. Having too much money from the start, you start throwing money at things, trying to get a better result. And I have an old friend, you'll hear me talk about him. His name's Ian Michelinis. Ian's one of my friends in Africa, South Africa. He does managed grazing over there. He's got 14,000 acres. He runs 6,000 cows in one herd. Okay? Think about that. 6,000 cows in one herd. Well, what Ian has taught me is over the years, he said, Greg, there's never been a seeding done, ever, that is good as what Mother Nature can do with good livestock grazing management. It comes back to managed grazing. You can call it adaptive grazing, AMP, holistic, mob grazing, or whatever you want to call it. It comes back to management. And nature is, it's up and down, folks. Everybody wants a recipe. How often do I need to move my animals? They want to pull out a calendar. Today's Monday. Okay, I get move them on Wednesday, Friday. No, you can't do that. Nature's not that way. So let's get back to biological wealth. So we're using animals to build the soil. We also are direct marketing our farm products, and that's something that's kind of adverse to people, especially farmers. We like to produce, but we're not very good marketers. I've got people that we market for now. We're taking other people's farm products, putting them with ours. When I say farm products, I'm talking about livestock, because they don't want to market it. They don't want to market it. And so I like talking with people. Jan, my wife, she likes talking with people. And I don't like being a price taker. I want to be a price setter. And so by direct marketing, that's what you're doing. Okay, you're taking all the middlemen out, and I don't care if you're raising mushrooms, cattle, sheep, guard dog, whatever. The more different species, the better. Get that middleman out of there. Get the middleman out if you can. So let's talk about steps for building soil life. We found, we need taller plants. We talk about this carbon, getting more organic matter trampled on the ground. When you're starting with really poor depleted soil, our organic matter, folks, on our farms, when we start, is usually under 1%. That's right, 1%. Our highest now is probably around 9%. We brought it up just by using animals. We don't use a lot of purchased inputs. Somebody I heard in the last talk talking about lime. Well, if you don't have any money, how are you going to put down lime? Do you all know that earthworms have the unique ability to source lime as they move through the soil? And when they eat that beautiful carbon organic matter that the animals trample on the ground, they turn that into earthworm castings. They inject just a little bit of lime in that casting. What's the pH of a casting? 7. How long does an earthworm live? 7 years. So how many children can he produce in 7 years? A lot. It's 1.2 million. So do the math on that. 1.2 million, they live for 7 years. We need earthworms. And I have a recipe, build it and they will come. You got to feed them. If you don't feed them, they're not going to be there. People come to our farm, they see our earthworms, like, Greg, can we take some home? I'm like, no. You can't have any of mine. Build it and they will come. As long as you're churning your soil, you're exposing the soil, you're not going to have very many earthworms. So we're trampling this ground litter onto the ground, and then it's followed by a full rest period between grazings. I think rest is one of the most underutilized tools that we have in our grazer's toolbox. Okay? I really do. In the United States, you can drive from the top of Missouri all the way down to the southern tip of Missouri, and you're not going to see too many polywires out there. They're set stock because most of the land is controlled by older farmers, and that's the way their dad did it and their grandfather did it. But they're starting to change. You know why? Because our input costs have skyrocketed. Nitrogen in the United States now, phosphorus, it's all went up. Everything's going up. Land costs have skyrocketed in the United States. I'll give you an idea. 5 years ago, you could buy land in my area for around $1,500 to $2,000 an acre. Today it's $10,000. Yeah, it went up, 5 times in the last 5 years. So we got to use this land more productively. And set stocking doesn't work, folks. It just doesn't work. And that's because the animals go back and regraze that plant again. You all know the most vulnerable time of a plant in its entire life is right after it's been grazed. It's trying to regrow. And you got an animal out there chewing it off again. Get the animals moving. Give the plant a break. And you're going to grow a lot more roots. Roots are the life of your farm. If you don't have roots, we call it grazing the roots off. So if you leave animals on a paddock and you're not moving them, they're grazing the roots off your farm. And if you get in a dry spell, you're done. You're done. You don't have any regrowth. So we're in the solar energy business. That's what we are, folks. We got these beautiful herbivores. They can eat that grass out there by that river. And they can put weight on. Oh, and by the way, they can get pregnant again. all from solar energy. It doesn't have to be planted. Perennial pastures, I think, are the lifeblood of any good grazing operation. If you can get your farm into perennial pasture where you don't have to constantly be ripping it up. It's not Elaine Ingham, but it was the other one from, I'll get her name in a minute, out of Texas. She's the dung beetle queen. That's what her name is. She's PhD. She talked a guy into letting her run a disc across their pasture. A disc. One pass. He goes, I don't really want you doing it. And he said, but I'll let you. Pat Richardson, Dr. Pat Richardson. So she ran a disc, but before she did, she took a soil life. She went down and she grabbed the soil life and she put it under a 60x micron microscope and blew it up. There was unbelievable life. It looked like Jurassic Park down there. I mean, there was critters. And then she ran a disc across it, just one pass. She didn't even open up the cutters. She kept them straight. One pass. She went back and took another sample. She killed 90% of the soil life. Just opening up the soil. What are you doing when you're plowing it? And we wonder why we don't have any arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi. Fungi, folks, is a very complex organ. It's got all these different, it looks like a spider web, all these different fingers going. Or when you're ripping your soil open, you're killing the fungi. You're breaking it up. It doesn't like that. Bacteria can thrive in those areas, but not fungi. We need fungi. It's one of the workhorses of our soil profile. These animals are not asking us to plow the ground. Keep your soil covered. Keep your soil covered. So I heard Ian speak many years ago. Ian was giving a talk in the United States. Here's this great big old South Africaner. He said, we're microbe farmers. We're not grass farmers. And I'm like, no, I kind of think I'm a grass farmer. But what Ian was talking about, it actually goes below the grass. So the last guy was giving the talk, I have to apologize, I forgot your name, but he had some really good slides just showing porous. You know, when the soil is friable, crumbly, you're going to make a pretty good living on that land because you're going to grow a lot of grass. You're going to get good regrowth. You got good oxygen. The thing that tears me up is when I see people driving across their pastures in a pickup truck. It's like, what are you doing? You're compressing your soil. You're taking the oxygen out of your pasture. Side by side, 4x4, the ATVs with the flotation tires, go for it. But a fixed tire, it compresses the soil. You're not going to grow as much grass in that area. So if you want to go out of business, go out there and drive up and down your pasture all day. That would do it. That'll do it. So we need to think about it. We're microbe farmers. In 1 teaspoon of healthy soil, 1 teaspoon, there's over 1 billion. That's a big number. There's over 1 billion microbes in 1 teaspoon. So we're in the solar energy business. We're collecting energy. Why would I want that grass plant to be this tall when I can have it 3 foot long? Now we're talking tall grass growing here. I'm not saying all of our pastures look like this, but there's times of the year that it does, and it makes sense. Because I know in Missouri we get hot. We get 100 degrees. That's degrees F. Y'all can convert that to centigrade. It's hot. We go 4 to 6, maybe all summer without rain. Well, if we keep our plants too short in the springtime and it gets hot, then we don't have anything to feed our animals. And my neighbors that are all out feeding hay in June and July. You can't do that. So that blade right there is catching a ton of energy from the sun. This is a soybean field. So this used to be soybeans. In the United States, we grow a lot of soybeans. Matter of fact, it's corn, soy, corn, soy, corn, soy. You drive across the Midwest, that's all you're going to see. On the arable land is corn and soybeans, corn and soybeans. Well, this guy, we got this farm leased, and it had been soybean. And I told the new owner when I leased it, I said, we're not putting soybeans there anymore. We're going to put grass. And that's what it looks like today. It's a very, very diverse species. Got tons of clover on it. Here's a problem. Spring flush grazing. So in our area, cows can get a little bit runny. Spring flush, it's got, there's not a lot of energy in the grass, a lot of protein. It shoots through the animal. And so what we've done is we always try and keep a part of our farm with some stockpile from the previous growing season. So that would be grass that was grown. Our spring flush, by the way, is April 1st. So our non-growing season starts about the end of October. So you got November, December, January, February, March, 5 months. We're not growing anything in those 5 months. I mean, we can get down below zero. We can get quite a bit of snow some years. Some years we don't get hardly any. It seems like it fluctuates a lot. But our biggest money saver on the farm is being able to stockpile this grass and keep the animals out on the landscape. Now, I understand you all are in Ireland. You get a lot of rain here in the wintertime. It gets muddy. We landed in Dublin September 1st, and it rained and rained and rained. It's like, man, is it ever going to stop raining? I mean, y'all got some serious rain here. And I'm looking at those fields. I'm like, could I put my cows out on that today? Probably not. So I'm going to challenge you all. I'm not going to sit up here and tell you everything that tickles your ears and sounds good. I'm going to make a little bit of people uncomfortable probably, but I'm going to say it anyway. How do you keep an animal out all winter? Why do we have to keep the animals in the barns all winter? Well, it's soft out there. They're going to tear your farm up. They're going to turn it in. It's going to look like a feedlot. Okay, well, here's my counter argument to that. And I'm just here to put ideas in your head, all right? Please don't take this personal, because it's not. It's not. Because it's the same thing in the United States. I'm not picking on you all. It's worldwide. And before I talk about this a little more, I want to give you the story of my neighbor. So last winter, we'd had a lot of rain. Snow had melted. It was soft, and the cows were out grazing. Rolled up the wire, the cows moved forward into the new piece of grass, and the guy across the road had his tractor with he's got a lot up there. He keeps the cattle in all winter long. That's just what he calls sacrifice lot. That's where he feeds his hay all winter long. So all the manure, all the urine is put in that spot, and then he brings in a big loader, pushes it all together in the spring, and puts it in the manure spreader and spends weeks spreading that manure. So the boys moved the cattle. They all went onto that fresh piece of grass, and he looked at that, and he told my intern, Justin, he goes, what Greg's doing over there might work, but it would never work over here. And he said, furthermore, Greg gets more rain than we do. And so I was up in Canada last year. We spent a month up there doing schools, and the same thing. Greg, what you do in Missouri might work, but it's not going to work up here in Canada. And yet there was people doing it. There was people doing what we're doing in Canada. I know there's a couple doing it in England. So here's the challenge, folks. Your animals are, I'll just say it, they're bigger than mine. I'm not going to beat around the bush. It's profit per acre, not profit per animal. So how do you keep a 1,600-pound cow out there on that grass when it's raining all winter? You can't do it. They're too big. The other thing that hurts you is if you're taking a lot of silage off. Well, I realize you've got to have some winter feed. Heck, we buy in hay. Okay, we'll buy in some hay because we get snow, 2 or 3 foot deep. Cows can't push through that. You got to have what I call insurance. There's nothing wrong with insurance. If your house burns down, you're going to wish you had it. But in the wintertime, these animals that are 900 to 1,000 pounds, do the calculations back to kilo. They don't tear up our farm. We don't have a part of our farm that we're taking haylage or silage off of. So we've got the whole farm. And Nikki was talking about earlier, on her first rotation, she likes to leave some behind. We do too. I want to have that whole farm open to me in the wintertime. You know why? Because we know it's going to rain, and it's going to get puggy, and it's going to get wet. You got to move them. Keep them moving. Don't get them tight. When you get your animals tight, you know what they do? You all are farmers. I'm not telling you something you don't know. You put a bunch of animals on a small area when it's really wet and puggy, they're going to destroy it. And you're going to have a bunch of weeds growing there the next year. There's a bunch of ryegrass or whatever you've got out there. Roots. Roots hold up animals. If you're constantly turning that land over, going to a new seeding, you don't have the roots to hold these animals up. Okay? We have a wonderful grass in Missouri. It's called fescue. People around me hate it. They hate it. They're spraying it with glyphosate to kill it. I'm like, what are you doing? Well, that stuff's hard on animals. They don't breed very good on it. It's got an endophyte in it that restricts blood flow to the extremities of the animal. That's the kind of fescue we have on our farm. But guess what? There's more money to be made on fescue than any other grass in Missouri. And that's because it stays green all winter long. I don't have to plant it. It's there every year. And it'll hold the cow up. It'll hold the cow up in puggy conditions. So I guess that's a challenge. I mean, I would love to see animals. I mean, that's our deal in Missouri. We're using that cow foot, the manure, and the urine. It's being put out there on the landscape 365 days of the year. It's being placed out there where it needs to be. That's why we don't own any equipment. Animal health skyrockets. We haven't wormed an animal in 25 years. We don't worm the calves. We don't worm the calves. And you know why? Because they don't get wormy. Why? You know, if this is my grass plant right here on the front, and I'm grazing up here, so we like to graze the top third of the plant and move. Top third of the plant and move. If you're grazing up here, you're not ingesting the parasites. Why are the parasites down in the lower canopy of your sward? Because they can't take sunlight. So we're grazing up here on the top part where the energy, we found out that the energy is higher in the top part of the plant. If you watch your animals, you turn them into a fresh paddock that's freshly regrown. What do? They go around and harvest those tips. And they'll do that in the first hour or two. Okay? If you leave them a second day, so that's the candy they ate, you leave them a second day, now they're eating the middle part of the plant. You leave them a third day, they're eating the bottom part, or they're regrazing what they've already grazed. It's not a good place to be. So, minimal herds. It improves recovery periods. I go onto a lot of farms in the United States, and I do consulting on different farms, and the first thing I ask them is how many herds do they have after I've looked at their farm. I'll go out in the pasture, we'll take a spade, we'll dig around, and they'll have 6, 7 herds. I'm like, what are you doing? Well, this is my black herd, that's my red herd. This bull's got to breed this group of heifers, and that bull, he's got to breed that group of heifers, and these are our stockers. They can't go with the cows. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, they're our stockers. They don't belong with the cows. And before you know it, you've got all these different pastures being grazed at the same time. That's a killer. Absolute killer. Put your herds together. Ian taught me that from Africa. He came, I had 3 herds. I was moving them twice a day. And he said, Greg, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm rotating animals. He said, but you got a little horsepower engine. Put them together. So we did that. And our quality of life increased because now we just had 1 herd. The bulls are taken out. We put the bulls in July 1st. They come out the end of August. This year we took them out after 50 days. My farm manager, Isaac, great, smart young guy, he's like, Greg, I think we can get it. We're just going to keep knocking it off 10 days each year. Ian says in nature, anything that doesn't breed in 21 days gets eaten by a lion. That's what he said. In Africa, they still got lions over there and leopards. You know, Ian used to shoot leopards. He would shoot lions, and every time he shot one, he started losing baby calves. He's like, what am I doing? He was shooting the chap on the block that knew the rules. And when he shot that predator, 7 more came in that didn't know the rules. They started killing baby calves. So Ian is predator friendly now. You can't shoot a lion on his ranch. He won't allow it because he doesn't want to lose baby calves. So we don't shoot coyotes anymore. I used to shoot coyotes. We run sheep. You know, that darn coyote, he's going to kill our sheep. No, not if you keep guard dogs in there. So we keep guard dogs. We have a lot of habitat that supports the coyotes. Folks, remember this. For every species that you can build a home for on your farm, I don't care if it's a pheasant, a worm, a centipede, whatever, it supports 8 additional ones. Think about that. So it's like a spider web. The more webbing you can promote on that farm, the stronger your farm's going to be. Not only in wildlife, but in diversity of plants, animals, and profit. At the end of the day, so Ian has a quote. It goes like this. Let me make sure I get it right. Before you can save the world, you have to save yourself. What's he talking about? Saving the world means trampling this carbon on the land, improving the soil, getting better water infiltration, all this stuff, which is great. But at the end of the year, if you come up with an open cow that didn't breed, you didn't save yourself. So you're taken off of the land. The bank comes in and takes your farm. So what he's talking about is all these soil building mechanisms we're talking about, you've got to make sure you maintain animal performance. Animal performance is number 1. So, increasing stock and density, we started doing that. We were doing MIG. Y'all have heard of MIG? Management Intensive Grazing. It's a term that was phrased by Jim Garish 30 years ago. And that's what we were doing. So we were doing management intensive grazing, rotating about every 2 days. It was a whole lot better than set stocking, which was what I was doing. I just gave them the whole farm. It didn't work out so well. So we started increasing the stock and density, focusing on getting full recovery periods. And once we combined all 3 herds into one, it made it a whole lot easier to get a fuller recovery period. So Ian has a 6,000 horsepower engine. Think about each cow in your herd as a horsepower. Well, at that time, we had like 80. Today, we've got about a 400, 450 horsepower engine, depending on the time of the year. And what we have found is we're actually improving the landscape and making more profit by getting that horsepower engine one. As many days of the year as possible. I don't know what's wrong with this thing. Seems like it's locked up on me. There we go. So, in the wintertime, we talked about no barns. Folks, we don't have a barn on our farms. We've got 22 farms now that we lease and we own. This thing took off. I want to talk a little bit about that real quick. Folks, I've already talked to somebody else that Nikki, that gave the first talk this morning. She talked about her and her husband started out with 18 acres in the house. They saved enough money to put that down. They just got offered a 3,500 acre property in Scotland. They were watching what that young couple was doing. We're finding the same thing happening to us. Older folks are getting out of the livestock business. They see the way we manage our property. They come to us now and ask us if we'd be interested. I'm like, yeah, if it touches us, we will. We do cattle drives. We walk them up and down the roads. We don't have the traffic. You'll have more traffic than we do. I'm not real comfortable running 400 head down some of your all's roads. We have shoulders in Missouri. I mean, shoulders that are here to that back wall wide. You can keep the cattle on the shoulder and people can still go down the road. I don't see any shoulders like that here. I got a little bitty car and I'm still watching my mirror. I'm thinking it's going to get taken off. But this is a winter picture, so the animals are grazing. Yeah, there's a little bit of skiff of snow on the ground. But what we're finding out, folks, animals like to be moved and they like to be outside. They do. They're healthier. They're healthier. I was a big proponent of burning. I like to burn. It was a real adrenaline rush to go up and throw a match on a new farm that hadn't had any livestock on it for 70 years. It looked like a stadium on fire at night. It's also you're very liable for that match. When you throw it down, you burn somebody's house down, or you burn up all their winter hay supply. You can't do that. Well, you could, but you're going to be out of business. So now, with this thinking of, I had all that carbon, I used to throw a match on it, there you watched it go up in the smoke. Why would I do that when I know better today? I don't. So we bring in the animals, we trample all this beautiful carbon on the landscape, and we're feeding the soil microbes and the earthworms, and we're keeping the soil covered all at once. It's just this wonderful trend that's been happening since millennia. In North America, folks, according to Lewis and Clark, some of their earlier expeditions, they talked about buffalo herds that you couldn't see the end of them. There's like 40 million bison moving across North America. Think about that. That's a big herd of animals. Big herd, but they were moving. They're always moving. Why? Because they're defecating, urinating, and trampling. They're fouling the food, what's left, and then they leave. So we're doing the same thing, but they were all kept together by predators. If they got outside that mob, they got picked off and eaten. Our predator today is the electric fence. So, grazing rule. How often to move the herd? Great question. There's just a general rule. Fast growth, fast moves. Slow growth, slow them down. Well, how do you do that? Well, you got to give them a smaller paddock. In the springtime, you give them a bigger paddock. That's why I don't like a lot of infrastructure in the inside of my farm. I don't want a bunch of permanent paddocks in there. Water, yes. I like to have more than one water source on a paddock because water allows you to move those animals and have the next spot you go to, there's another water point. If you make animals walk a long distance to go back to water, you're going to find out that they overgraze the area around the water, and that's where all the manure ends up. And the far end of the paddock will grow up into weeds. Well, that's what happens. So the number of livestock moves, that just depends on your labor resources. We have an internship program on our farm now. We keep 2 young interns, and I have a farm manager. They're the ones handling the farm while Jan and I are gone. And we're going to be gone for 2 weeks. I don't worry about it because we got good young men trained. People are worried about the next young generation. Well, they don't know how to work. They don't know how to do this. Folks, there's some really sharp young folks out there. I met one the other day, and I'm probably going to embarrass him, but he's Shay. I was impressed. You know, Shay's got the passion. He's figured it out, him and his wife, and I was impressed. I'm like, you know, there's the kind of guy I want to hook up with. That's the kind of guy I want to do business with because he's a thinker. You gotta use your noggin. You just can't put it on automatic. Sorry about that, Shay, but that's the way I am. We have a lifetime farm lease now. So this is a farm we leased, and the landowner came back to me, ripped it up in front of my face. I had a 10-year lease on it. He ripped it up, said, your lease isn't any good. I'm like, well, sir, I've already worked on it a year, and it's looking pretty good. Yeah, but Cindy and I decided we're going to give you a lifetime lease. So his wife and him put it in their will. Their kids can't sell this farm until I'm dead. They bought that farm to deer hunt on. That's all it is, deer hunt. And so I tell people I don't go deer hunting with his kids because I don't want to get shot. Folks, they are so passionate about what Jan and I have done to that farm. You could offer that guy any amount of money. He wouldn't sell it. He's emotionally attached to that farm now. Soil building recipe. So you take a group of ruminant animals, trampling carbon onto the soil surface, followed by a full recovery period. That's what we're talking about here, not leaving them. So this is microbe feeders. They're actually feeding the microbes. This would be in the fall. The grass has kind of got frosted. It's not growing so quick now, but they're still feeding themselves. Folks, our animals need to start working more for us. It takes a lot of stress out of our lives. I see stress in America. I'm usually called into a farm when it's just about to go under. It's a very stressful situation to be in because you've got people that are dependent on you to bail them out. And sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. You know what the problem is? Right here. It's in the heart. It's in the heart. We're all that way. We're resistant to change. We really are. It's painful. It was painful for me. I mean, when Ian told me I had to put all those herbs together, I came up with a whole list of reasons why I couldn't do it. I said, Ian, I can't do that. I can't put all them cows together. Because at that time I had 8 farms. They were 2 to 3 miles between farms. I'm like, Ian, if I put them all together, they're going to run out of grass. Then I got to go get a semi, haul them to the next farm. He goes, Greg, last time I checked, a cow had 4 legs. Make them walk. I'm like, what? And he goes, make them walk. Well, I needed to be told that. I felt uncomfortable making that decision, but I knew he was right. And he said, just brainstorm it, do it. He said, put an ad in the Tribune, the paper, tell them you're going to have a cattle drive, you're going to have a grass-fed meat cook-off that night with live music, and they can bring their horse. $250 a head, make them come. You mean I'm going to make money to move my cattle? Well, yeah, he said, charge the boogers. Ian's all about keeping the money on the farm. That's what he's about. It's all going to town, folks. I saw it last year in Alberta. You know, in Alberta, they never own a combine ever. They don't. There's combines there that are from here to that wall wide. The headers on them. They never buy them. They make payments for 2 years and they trade them in 2 years. Who's making the money on that? It's not the farmers. It's all going back to the equipment manufacturers. And I'm sorry if there's some equipment manufacturers in the crowd. There's a whole lot more farmers out here than there are equipment manufacturers. Folks, we got to keep the money on our, we got to keep the money in our pocket so we have a place for our young people to come back to. We got to have a place for the young people. Don't graze the roots off your plants. Make sure the plants are recovered. If they're not recovered, you're coming back too soon. We don't seed anything anymore, folks, and we've got probably 30% clover in almost every pasture. We don't reseed. Why? And that's because we give a long enough recovery period in the fall. It puts on a black seed head, and the cattle come in, or the sheep, and they trample that on the ground. And people say, with sheep, you can't grow clover. They'll eat it all out of your pasture. Well, they will if you leave them there. Some of our best pastures are sheep pastures. That's where we kill some of our biggest bucks. Do you know we sell bucks? You can come onto our farm, pay me a lot of money, and I'll let you go kill one. I can't sell the deer to you, but I can sell a chance. And folks in America are stupid about horns, especially men. They'll pay a lot of money to get a big horn animal. We'll sell it to them. Ian says, take their money. Just take it. In Africa, Ian gets $12,000 for a kudu hunt. Y'all know what a kudu is? It's that great big animal. It's got the big spiral horns that are like 4 feet tall. They're massive. They're 900 to 1,000-pound animals. Ian's got mobs of them grazing his farm. Do you know he doesn't have a high game fence? A lot of his neighbors do. Ian does not have a high game fence. He's got 8 different species of big game now living on his ranch. Why are those animals there? It's because of the way he's grazing. When you walk on his soil, it's like walking on peat moss. It's soft. The bricks, the sugar in his plants are through the roof. Our bricks have went up. How many of y'all measure the sugar content on your forage? It's a pretty good practice to get into, and it's easy to do. Just borrow your wife's garlic press. Don't tell her you borrowed it. And get you a refractometer. You can buy a refractometer online. The one I like is called the Tego, A-T-E-G-O. You can get one for like $70. You squeeze the juice on it, hold it up to sunlight, and it'll give you a reading in the sugar content in your forage. Okay? The higher the sugar content, the better daily gains you're going to get. So this is day 1. This is a pasture that got away from us. I don't like brush hogging, but I will on some farms. Some of my landowners, they're city folks. They want that farm brush hogged at least once a year. They do. Well, if you're going to keep the lease, you better do that. So this is day 1. We put the wire up. This is a pasture that got away from us in the spring. So this would be the end of July. All that grass you see, very low palatability. But down underneath, it was green. So the animals got a diet. They trampled that on the ground. I didn't make them eat that. I left. Okay, that's what it came back. So the worms came in and ate all that grass that young man is holding right there. That all turned to carbon, turned brown. Because, think about this, folks. I don't want to take that grass. That'd be a good one to do it with, though. I'm going to grab this one. So for every grass blade that you can make a ruminant animal do this to, just bend it over, it kills the sap flow back to the root. So everything on this side of that bend is now carbon, organic matter. You're feeding it to your worms. You're feeding it to the soil. You're keeping a layering out there, so if it does rain and you're in a dry spell, you can hold some moisture out there. It feeds the soil. That fellow that was giving the talk before me, he was showing the porousness of that soil, how it was gathering water and infiltrating it versus soil that didn't have that. The water just runs off. So in the United States, we don't have a water problem. You know what we have? We have a water infiltration problem. We do. We can't hold any water. I mean, all the arable land across the Midwest, all the water ends up in the Gulf of Mexico. That's because they've tiled their farms. They're still tiling it. What do they mean by that? They're building terraces, they're putting big pipes in it, and the spring rain comes, it hits those tiles, and it goes out to the creek. Along with the anhydrous ammonia, the urea, all the stuff they're spraying on the farm, it's going down the Gulf of Mexico. Yep, so we got a 8,000 square mile dead zone down there. They don't appreciate us sending all that stuff down there, by the way. What if we had porous soil? We could hold that stuff in the soil better. That's what we're talking about. So day 2, the trampled litter. This is Ian's quote: for every grass blade that you can trample on the ground, you get 2 back. That's a pretty good return on your investment. There's the worm castings. Pull your soil back and look at it. There should be earthworm castings everywhere. We went on Will's farm. The young fella's he was up here, gave an opening talk this morning. And Will and his wife are doing an awesome job on that farm. They've got worm castings everywhere. He's not putting slurry down. He's letting the animals trample, and he's moving them. There's all kinds of worm castings out there. We need these critters. Warm season grass. These are some grasses that we grow. I'm just showing you what we grow in Missouri. We don't have a summer slump anymore. So this one here is called Eastern Gamma Grass. It's what the buffalo ate for thousands of years in the prairies. This one will get about 4 foot tall. It's got a taproot on it, 18 feet long. 18 feet. So if you think about that, what's that 18-foot root doing? Well, it's breaking through the hard pan, number one. It's transferring minerals deep in the soil profile up onto those leaves. The animals eat those leaves, and they're pooping all that back onto the landscape. So the cool season grasses now have access to those minerals. Dr. Elaine Ingham, she's probably one of the leading soil biologists in the world. And she talks about breaking the hard pan. And she shows a diagram on there, the first guy that had an old wooden plow. We saw one, by the way, in that museum in Balamoni. Did I pronounce that right? They got one in that museum there. It's an old wooden plow. It looked like it went down about that deep. Then we came up with a tractor. Now we can go deeper. Now they got a deep ripper. And Elaine says all we're doing is reestablishing a deeper hard pan. What takes care of a hard pan? Plant roots. Plant roots. They're the most effective tool we have for breaking hard pan. There's some of the winter strip grazing. So the animals are harvesting their own feed out on the landscape. We like that. Folks, I feel like when I see my neighbor hook onto a big round bale and he has to start the tractor up a diesel fuel and I just move a wire. You know what? That's called an unfair advantage. And in farming, you need to figure out what your unfair advantage is. And leverage that, folks. Leverage it. I'm not telling you you have to go home and do everything that I'm doing here, but I did challenge the people in South Dakota. There was a big crowd. There was probably 1,000 ranchers came into this workshop I gave for that day, and they were in a bad drought. I mean, bad drought. There was stress in their faces. They didn't have any pasture. Big ranches. I'm talking 5,000 to 20,000 acre ranches. Big herds of cattle. And I challenged everybody in that crowd. I said, you don't have to go home and do what I did here. Just go home and put up one wire. And there was silence. I'm like, what do you mean? I said, just put up one wire. Just split your ranch in two. Don't graze it all as one. Just split it in two. You'll have double the grass. Some of them did that. They had water. They had water everywhere. There's ponds all over those big ranches. But they just gave the animals the whole ranch because in a drought, let them have the whole thing. If you will just split those paddocks in two, and a lot of this is set up. I've been on quite a few farms since we've been here, and you've got these stone fences everywhere. They're beautiful, by the way. Man, get you a solar charger and some step-in posts and a reel and split those darn things in two. If you'll do that on each one of your paddocks, that's a start. It's not that hard to do. You can do that in probably 10 minutes. Just do a little bit of it. I liked what, and there was somebody here earlier, I think it was you. I'll blame you. You look like you were the culprit that said this. He was saying, just do a little. Just do a little. See how you like it. And if you like the results, you're going to be encouraged to do a little bit more. And a little bit more. And that's why today, do we move cattle just for the fun of it? Heck no. We move cattle to make a profit. And we have found one of the best times to move cattle in Missouri is from 12 o'clock noon to 2 o'clock. Why is that? From 12 to 2. We're in the solar energy business. When is the sun the hottest? From 12 to 2. So when the Brixes go up, those cows are eating Hershey candy bars out there. It can be hot as blazes, and the boys will go out and move them at noon before they take their lunch break. Every single cow will leave the shade of a tree, and they'll go eat. And that's why this last year, our calving season was about 20 days. I mean, those cows are cycling so fast. Those bulls got them like that. Yeah. Fat. Cattle are fat. I like what Nikki talked about going in the wintertime. Get your animals fat. You don't want a skinny cow going in the winter. If you got a skinny cow, sell her. Don't name your cows. I'm serious, that's a big one. If you name your cows, you're not going to get rid of them. We call them fly magnets. There'll be a cow in that herd just packed with flies. What do you got her for? Well, that's Myrtle. I don't care. Myrtle needs to go make hamburgers somewhere because she don't need to be on your farm. We call those freezer camp cows, okay? You can't be emotionally attached. It's a business. I love my cows to death. I really do. I'm a cow man. We got sheep, but I love my cows. But if that cow doesn't give me a calf, she's gone. Yep. ATV bale unroller. This is something I came up with years ago. I like unrolling my hay because when it's muddy, and if I put a bale ring in Missouri, it's just a mud pit because we don't get frozen ground a lot, maybe for 2 weeks out of the whole winter. But when I unroll my hay and I spread it over a wide area, all the animals get a crack at it. And my young man, Isaac, you heard me talk about Isaac, our farm manager, he came up with petting the cat method. Petting the cat, what are you talking about? When you pet the kitty. So when you pet a kitty, I'll ask you, when you pet a kitty, you want to pet it with the hair going like this, right? Have you ever petted a cat backwards, pushing the hair up? They don't like it. You might even get clawed, okay? Well, he found out that a big round bale, if you unroll it the opposite direction, it'll just kick off chunks. It doesn't unroll a wide path. It kicks off chunks. We like that. So we can spread a big round bale over a larger area. We're not going to pug. We're not going to pug the land. Okay? That's what it looks like. Now that was on snow. That's on snow. That was a 24-inch snow right there. 5 minutes. Thank you, sir. So we just kept the animals moving. That's what we did. Kept all that fertility out. So we're bruising the soil with the animal hooves. Repairing areas, we'll use in a repairing area, but we're only on it for 12 hours. We have found that it's actually improved the repairing areas. They're deeper. They have fish in them now. We're only there for 12 hours and we're gone. Quality water. Animals are 75, 80% water. Make sure you watch the water. Watch them drink. If an animal's licking at the water, she's out there licking on it, she's telling you something. You got bacteria in your water. Fix that. And the way you fix it is that little floaty deal there in the middle. That's a hypochlorite tablet we soak in there, and it takes the bacteria out. Cover crops, dung beetles, the perfect manure pad. I get pretty warm and fuzzy over that. Nikki talked about the perfect one this morning. There it is. It's got the nice little ridges around the edge. Folks, when those animals are pooping like that, they're healthy. You know what that tells me? It tells me that calf's not going to get sick. That's sucking on that cow. She's going to rebreed, and she's going to stay fat through the winter. We don't wean. We don't. We leave the calves on them through the winter, make the cows wean them. Some cows will not wean their calves. Get rid of them. Also, we don't want a beef cow that gives a lot of milk. A cow that puts out a lot of milk is a beef business. That cow's going to get thin on you. We want a cow that gives just enough milk to get that calf going, and then they're getting that nutrition from the grass. Now, if you're in the dairy business, that's not the way you want to go. Healthy soil equals healthy animals. Learn to look at the hide on your animal. They should be slick. They got manure all over their butt. Why do they got manure all over them? Probably got some parasites in you, making them graze too short. Learn to use unfair advantages. You've got sheep, they can give you 2 to 3 versus a cow giving you 1. That's an unfair advantage. Cattle mob move, we move them down the roads. We'll put up a wire. It's not hot. We just bring the whole mob down the road. We do live in a rural area, so we do have that advantage. It's kind of nice not having to haul them. Carbon-rich soil, we saw pictures of that. Folks, when you get sward of grass like that, you dig down and you get the crumbly stuff, there should be worms in there. If there's not worms, you got a problem. If it looks more like a potting like you make a brick out of it, you don't have very good, you just don't have any way to hold water. So give plants a head start. Severely grazed spring plants, minimal regrowth. Immature spring plants, you have low energy, high protein, and your animal performance will always suffer. We did it. There we go. I like that picture because that's early spring. I've still got some stockpile left from the previous growing season. Those animals are going to thrive on that. It's like giving them a little bit of dry hay with every green blade of grass they get. It's perfect. It's perfect. Observe the gut feel on your animals. If they're sunken in, I'm not talking about dairy, because dairy cows are just more bone, they got more bone on them than beef cattle. But on beef cattle, if they're sunken in on the left-hand side, when you move them in the morning, you should have gave them a bigger area or moved them sooner. You're limiting those animals. And when you do that with beef cows, you're going to end up with some cows that don't breed back. That's a big one. You want to watch that. This is my neighbor on the right. He's doing just continuous grazing. On the left, we've got 4 times the amount of cows he's got. Are we overstocked? No, because we're moving them. Late summer, graze to trample ratio. So my perfect for grazing is 1/3 trampled, 1/3 grazed, and 1/3 left standing. Now that's on a cool season grass pasture. This is in Missouri. I'm not saying you have to do this in New Zealand, but that's what we're doing. Ireland. I've been to New Zealand. That's a pretty cool place. Folks, don't let your farm looking like that. Bare soil is death. I don't care where you live. If you got bare soil, it's not going to hold any rainwater. That is our website. I just give a plug for our YouTube channel. I put out 5 videos a week. It's called Judy Regenerative Rancher. Check it out. And it's free. You don't charge anything.